Hello? There we go. Starting to get a few people in here. How's everybody doing? Slow start today. All right. There we go. All right, it's picking up. Well, as many of you know, I asked in my stories if we wanted to do a live video discussing something or me turning something, and it was like 68% wanted to do a Q&A discussion. So we're going to do that this morning, and basically you can ask me anything about pins, pin making, nibs, history. I'll try my best to answer. And I also got a few questions that were DM'd to me that I wrote down. So if we get into a slow point or whatever in questions or you may have, I can default back to that. So got something covered in most any case. Worst case, I got a puppy sitting here we can show pictures of. I can turn the camera on. So if you've prepared any questions or have any questions, ask away. I will try my best, depending on how fastly they come across, to answer them all. And I also have a pen and paper to jot down things as they happen. So if you have any questions about pins and related, penmanship, history, feel free to ask away. Oh, Michael. I'll do a quick couple questions I got via DM while you guys are typing. And then I'll get into some others I got via DM that are more in depth. First being, what is my favorite ink and nib, which is a common question. My personal preference is for ink. I use walnut ink a lot. I make my own because I have walnut trees and it's very simple to make. Because all you have to do is take the husks off of them, boil them in water, and add gum arabic to it to bind it. It's really, really simple. Wood, pin small. Oh, okay. Small nibs. Okay. But I use walnut ink a lot because it shows up right away. I don't have to wait for it. So. Phone's ringing. All right. First question is, my favorite wood goes back to my ink, walnut. I like walnut a lot because it has a lot of varieties and color, shade, grain. It smells good. Walnut is one of my favorite woods. It's also lightweight, so when I make a walnut pen, even though most people think of walnut being heavy wood, in a pen it's actually very, very light, typically in the 6 to 8 grams range. So yeah. Okay, next question was, how do I make a pen fit a very, very small nib like a EF66? Let me grab my pliers 1 second. I knew there'd be some adjustment questions, so I'm prepared, luckily. All right, we're going to flip the camera and point it down at the desk. Most challenging pen. I'm going to be... Okay, got the challenging pen part. All right, so to make a pen fit a very small nib, say for example an EF66. Okay, so here is I've got all kinds of like little examples, things I make for videos in case I need them. So the first thing is, like this one, this is a Nico G, and this will fit this pen. The flange isn't attached, ignore that, that's for my own benefit. And the arc is very, very dramatic to match that arc. of the Nico. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to match the arcs here. So when I grab something like an EF66, which is ridiculously small if you've never used one compared to like a Nico G. It's very, very small. Okay. And of course this one fits. But if it didn't, basically all you're wanting to do is change this arc right there, the arc shape. And I always recommend my pliers, of course, because it makes it very, very simple to adjust. Because to change that arc, and I'm going to try and get it. There it is. Okay, to change that arc, all I'm doing is rolling this. And if you look, that just became a very, very tight arc from a very wide one. So that would be one direction that might help you. If that didn't work, you would bend it the other direction. And this actually just got very, very tight in there. So now the EF66 is tight in this same flange just by changing the shape of that arc right there. And that's what these pliers that I've developed are for, is you can just simply do quick adjustments by doing a rotation. That's all you ever do, is do a quick rotation. And then it keeps this arc the same all the time because it's exactly perfect. So that's how you go from a large nib to a small nib. Just change that arc. If you're in a pinch and you're out and about, don't have something with you, you can simply change the arc by doing this. Watch. I just flattened that arc. And the reverse is true. I can pinch it. Now, the only thing is there, you can develop a crease if you go too far. That's why I always recommend the pliers. But in a pinch, you can do that. There you go. All right. We're going to go to... Let me flip this camera back around. All right. Next question I just got was the most challenging pin I've ever had to make. How many times can you adjust? Okay. Got that. The most challenging pin I ever made is probably, honestly, flowers and watch parts are very difficult just because it's very time consuming and patient. You have to be, and it's very involved. It's time consuming. There's lots of challenges I get from custom orders where a person says, hey, I have an idea for a pin and I want it to be based on the Queen of Hearts. I'm just pulling something out of thin air. So there's a lot that goes into me trying to come up with ideas. So that's pretty challenging sometimes. And so, yeah, I'd say flowers, watch parts are the most difficult for me just because of the time involved. How many times can you bend? Okay, that's a good question. Bend, and what do you do if it's too tight? If it's too tight, you just missed it. You'll be able to catch us on the replay to see how to fit a nib, and I also have a YouTube channel. Brass will bend many, many times before it gets what's called work hardened. Work hardened is, just a second, making a note, flat foot versus angle. Work hardening is where metal breaks down and basically from being bent over and over and over. So you can let me grab a piece of brass. This is a kind of a large chunk of brass. And you can take this and you can bend it this way and then bend it the other way and bend it back and bend it back and back and back, and it'll work harden. And what happens is basically the molecules give way and it will crease and then it will cut. Brass is very, very forgiving for work hardening. If you have a pin with a brass or nickel silver flange, you should be able to adjust it several times in its life before that happens. So I would try to get, a pin to fit most nibs that you plan to use all the time so you don't have to go back and forth. The other option is a bullock flange, but it takes a lot of times before brass will actually crease and break. It will deform and be all mangled, but you could actually still make a usable flange out of it. Even if it's mangled, it's just going to look really, really ugly. So, okay. Flat foot versus angle foot. Traditional grip, noting that. Okay. Flat foot versus angle foot is basically what they're talking about. This is what I call a traditional foot. The foot of the pin being this end where the flange is. And angled is where I cut these off at an angle. And that idea was actually created by Joe Vitolo when he worked with Paper and Ink Arts to develop the adjustable hourglass many years ago. And it does one single purpose. It doesn't do anything else other than it keeps the end of the pen out of the ink when you dip it. So when you dip it into an ink well, you know, you're always dipping like this. Well, the lowest point is this point of the foot. By angling it, you don't have that in the way, and you dip it in the ink. That's the only thing it is. It's a cosmetic difference and keeps the end of your pen out of the ink. Okay, most challenging, I got that. Number of times, flat foot. Traditional grip. Okay, for someone, like it was Logan, just asked, show the traditional grip from a couple different angles. I'm going to take my phone out of my holder here and flip it. All right. I'm going to grab a pen. Bear with me. Okay. I got my old pens here too. So Zenarian Excelsior. All right. Let me put a quick nib in it just so we have something to reference. Give me 1 second. Ugh. Need more hands. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so we got traditional grip versus modern grip. Modern grip is how everyone grabs a pencil or a pen and they write, and the pen sticks out to the side, pretty much like that, and it's sideways, okay? So you can write like that completely with an oblique pen or a straight pen holder. Traditional grip, you put your finger on top, knuckles up in the air, and look at that. It becomes in line with your arm, okay? So my knuckles are facing up, okay? And then the pen is still there, but instead of writing on the side of my hand. Now, when you do that, basically what happens is, if you look, let me get this in the holder, the pen then becomes an extension of your arm. It's right in line with your arm. So for movement, arm movement, and everything, it's going to be basically an extension of your arm instead of something jutting out to the side, which becomes harder to control because it's not just you're looking at your arm. You've got two different angles here to look at. So by doing that traditional grip, knuckles up, facing the ceiling, palm down, and then you'd have a couple pink fingers that would rest on the desk so your hand is up. That's traditional. So now you can use either one. The only time I would say that you really can't use this is if you're doing full out ornamental penmanship where you're doing big muscular or big arm movement stuff. Not going to work well. So I would say if you're going to do, your arm movement, you need to work on your traditional grip. Otherwise, you can do it with any, in copper plate or, in grocers or Spencerian with a modern grip, because basically it is, we just aren't taught to hold a pen anymore. We haven't been for many years. Does that make sense, Logan? And did that cover enough angles so you could see it? All right. So we've adjusted pen, an oblique, traditional grip, flat foot versus angle, small pin and nibs. All right. One question I had via DM, since I don't have one right now, is why do I dislike Magnus and holders? You may have seen in the past that it depends on your goal, Unicorn. if your goal is to be traditional and train traditional and end up in ornamental penmanship, you would want to start over, but it is like starting over if you do the traditional grip. It's not something that most of the world does. Favorite wood was walnut. You can catch that on the replay. So it's up to you. I'm not one of those people that's a purist and going to tell you, hey, if you aren't doing the correct, traditional way, traditionally holding your pen, traditionally writing, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe in that. There's too many things that have changed, in years. But if you want to end up traditional, I would say start with that grip. To where you're, if you want to end up traditional, is where you're writing exactly like they did when the script was developed. So, all right, back to my question. The question I got was why I dislike Magnuson so much. Magnuson single wood holders are fine. Favorite pen makers. That's going to be, oh geez. All right, just a second. All right, with Magnuson and Zenarian, I have always liked Zenarian better. There's a reason. Okay. This is a real Zenarian fine art holder, old one, 12-incher. And they did a lacquer finish. So what that means is the finish is lacquer, but what matters is the fact that this is a segmented pen. Segmented pen is where you have wood 1, wood 2, wood 3, wood 4, all put together in the same pen, which is like a lot of the pens I do are segmented. You're segmenting the wood together. When you do that, there are tiny, tiny variances in between the way this wood expands and contracts. Most woods are within a small, small range, usually around 7% of their size. So, in order to keep those very, very minimal change from happening and limiting them, you want to seal this wood so that humidity and temperature are the two things that makes wood expand and contract. And Zenarian did it with lacquer. Okay? Magnuson, and this is a real Magnuson, on the other hand, did segmenting, and they did a French polish. And French polish is shellac, and it would work if they did a French polish, a full out, like you're supposed to, French polish. French polish is put on in very, very thin coats, shellac, basically, and they just did a few coats. So this wood is not sealed well. And as you can see, pens are about the same age. If you look at a Magnuson and Zenarian's going to be shiny, Magnuson's going to be dull. And the reason it's dull is it had just a few coats of shellac. And shellac is a fine finish. There's nothing wrong with it, but you got to put it on thick to keep the wood and ivory and all the different things from swelling at different rates and slow that so it doesn't happen and doesn't come apart. I've seen almost every single one of these. There's always big fat ridges on a Magnuson that catch, which drive me crazy. And the second thing is they fall apart. They literally will come apart. I've repaired many, many of them where the glue gives away, everything gives away because of all the expansion and not being sealed from the environment, and they just come apart. And that's why. And the other thing is with Magnusons and their shellac, since they did a very thin shellac. Let me flip this camera. Seems like you can see it better. If you look at this pen, this is very, very typical for Magnusons. It's cracked. Such a thin coat of finish that water penetrated the end of this wood for many, many years and cracked, and it's now ruined. You could never really use this pen. So that is my problem with Magnuson. It's not that they're not pretty. And I don't know who did it, but many years ago someone said Magnuson is the be-all, end-all of pens. If you don't have a Magnuson, you can't write properly. And that's just a farce. So, not true. So that is my dislike for Magnuson. They didn't put any thought into the engineering end of their pen, whereas Zenarian did and other makers. Now, a Magnuson that's just a single wood that's not segmented, I don't know why it says live video paused. A single wood pen is better than a segmented pen with Magnusons, but It is what it is. Okay, let's see what's going on here. We got a couple people saying it's paused. I'm flipping the camera around again to see if that's it. Did that fix it? I don't know. Is anybody there? There we go. Am I back? I think I had a connection issue. Is everybody back? I'm hoping it went live again. There we go. Good. Okay. I don't know. Connection issue, I guess. All right. So did all that explanation about the Magnus get across? I got some really crazy questions too. Not a bunch, but one that's really, really crazy. All right. With Magnusons, okay, it did get across. Zenarian finish is lacquer. So to kind of sum up what I did, Zenarian finish is lacquer. Magnuson is just shellac. And the shellac is not as effective in thin coats like they did. They just did a few coats of shellac in what they called a French polish, which wasn't a full-out French polish. So they fall apart. And I showed, in case you see, to give an example of the fact that how thin the coats are, almost every Magnuson is cracked on the end that I've seen, most of them, not all. A used Magnuson is, and they will come apart. So that's why I don't like them. Do you have something to do? Do you have to do something to burl wood to save? Yes, for burl wood, it has to be stabilized. Most all burl woods. There are a few exceptions, some very, very hard burls, and it depends on the growth. But burl as itself is pretty soft, so you have to soak it in basically a thin resin, and then it hardens the wood, makes it more usable for turning, and doesn't fall apart then. So yes, all burl, almost 99% of burl in the world has to be stabilized before I can use it. All right. Here's a great question I got via DM, and I had to ask them about it. Do I lay awake at night and think of all the people who failed to get their hands on one of my highly coveted pens? So it's not as bad as it sounds. I messaged them back and said, trying to get an understanding of what they meant. Basically, they meant they go to my website and everything's sold out, which is the case most of the time. Unfortunately, the public demand is higher than what I can create them, but I do one thing different than most. I will accept custom order for anything. It doesn't matter what it is. If you want a $39.99 pen, you can custom order it, and it will be just like the $39.99 pen that I have on my website. I don't charge anything for custom orders. And if you look at the top of my webpage, it kind of explains that in a little paragraph in yellow. I made sure that was still up there. So don't think that just because everything's sold out, you can't get one of my pens and you have to sit there and sit on the computer and wait for something to pop up. It doesn't work that way. I don't do that. I hate that. There are some that do that, and it makes me absolutely insane. It shouldn't be a fight and a split decision, a split-second decision to decide if that's the pen for you. You don't know what you're getting size-wise. Unless everything is identical, then you would. But I'll tell you about the custom orders in just a second. So I make it possible to custom order by email anything. It doesn't matter. And you get the same treatment if you buy the cheapest pen versus the most expensive pen. I don't treat you any different. So the wait list varies. Right now, I think I'm approaching kind of a solid 8 weeks. I've been the past couple weeks in a 6 to 8 week wait list, and it's just a matter of me getting to the pins in that list. It sometimes takes a few emails back and forth to work out the details. I'm very patient. I'm used to this. I'm used to answering a million questions. It's kind of part of it, and I have to do it in order to be able to custom order any pin. That way you guys don't have to fight for them. You shouldn't have to fight for something, a tool that you'd like to have. That's just ridiculous. So, there are times that I do available pins, and there is a little bit of a fight, but I always say, hey, look, anyone wants to email me, I'll give you specs first. I always try to do that. For grip size, how do you determine it? If you go to my website, across the top is something that says FAQ and custom orders. Click on that. That has a little paragraph I did with a bunch of suggestions on determining your grip size. If it's a stock pen, I can base it off of that. If you have a pen, say from Paper and Ink Arts that you bought that you like and the size was perfect for your hand, I can make a pen based upon that. You just got to tell me what pen. I have them all here. If not, there's a bunch of different tricks. One of them is just go into a hardware store and pick up a bunch of dowel rods and feel. The other one would be wrapping your pencil in something until you form the shape you want and then taking some measurements. There's all kinds of helpful information on doing this over a distance, because I know it's hard to do, especially, you don't ever get to hold the pen until it's done. So I have lots of things on my FAQ, my frequently asked questions page on my website. Lots of tips, lots of explanations of the finishes, of the foot, of all kinds of things, all there. Also, there's a link to my gallery so you can get inspiration. My gallery has, I don't know, it's approaching I think 4,000 different custom pins I've made over the years now. So there's lots of them there. So that's out. Inspiration in making pins. That's awesome. Going, what is this person doing? Feeling what the dowel rods feel like? That's all right. It's just tell me you're a nutty calligrapher. Inspiration in making pins comes from all over the place. Good Lord, man, I see things and I go, okay, that'd be cool. Whether it be colors, whether it be items, and it can. Typically, the cool ones come from odd places. Let's see, for example, Flowers pins came from a customer, which that's kind of a different thing. The watch parts came from the fact that I had a few of my grandfather's old wristwatches, and they didn't work, and looked up the value, and they were pretty much worthless. So I kept one, and then the rest of them I disassembled. Looking just out of curiosity, and I thought that'd be cool to put in a pen, and then I thought that I'd seen that before, and I had. There's a similar thing where someone prints out the look of it, and then they were putting it on the inside of ballpoint pens. So that's kind of where that came from. I get inspiration from birds a lot. Birds have cool color combinations and angles, and I get a lot of bird inspiration. Comes from all kinds of different places. All right. One question I had was how I got started in making pins. And you may have seen this. I just recently did an interview for a local little blacksmith thing. Favorite diamond wood. Good Lord. Diamond wood is a thing of the past. Let me address that first. Diamond wood is, here, I'll show you what it is. And let me grab another piece, hold on. Okay. Diamond wood is this, it's birch, okay? And what they do is they laminate layers of birch together that are colored. So you get this crazy pattern, okay? And this is a very, very tough, dense stuff compared to this, which is Spectraply. You can hear. This is very, very hollow, very thin. So this is impregnated with the resin. And what happened was the factory burnt that makes this. They were the only ones that make it, and they decided not to rebuild. So the supply that was left was all that's left. I bought all I could. I'm now down to, I think, 5 pieces left. And my favorite color was they did like a peacock color. That was the colors of a peacock. It was like a green and a blue, and it was really, really cool. But that's what diamond is. And they also would cut it at an angle too, whereas Spectraply and the others are just straight. So it creates a very, very different look to it when you turn it. So yes, diamond wood hurts too. It shoots off little itty bitty tough splinters. They get into your clothes and poke you. It's this ridiculously tough stuff. They actually made it was commonly used for bows, for bow and arrow type bows, because it's so strong and so tough. It's awesome stuff. It's unfortunate they're not going to bring it back. Okay, and then how I got started. I touched on it in the interview. Long story short, bought my family farm from my mother. Been here for forever. In 2012, I think it was. Been in the family since 1841. And I found my great-great-grandfather's penmanship supplies. Didn't know he was a penman or teacher of penmanship. And this would have been in the late 1800s. Found all his supplies, all his scrapbooks, his throwaway scrap paper and stuff. And I thought, hey, this would be really cool to learn how to do, just out of a family history type thing. So I went searching and found a lady named Jane Farr in Indiana, and she's on the north side of Indianapolis, and said, hey, I found your website. I'm looking to learn how to do this. And she introduced me to the Calligraphy Guild of Indiana. I went to their meeting, met a teacher, Ellen Simon. She got me started teaching me copperplate, my first class. And when I signed up for that class, she said, hey, you need to buy an oblique pen. And I was like, what? Who? And I went to look and basically found Paper and Ink Arts, and had like 2 choices. And I was like, that's kind of boring, it'd be nice to have something a little bit different. And so I knew I had just restored a shopsmith just a year or 2 before that. I said, I'm going to give this a shot, even though I've never really used a lathe before. So I made a couple, and then I started gluing woods together and making them, and ended up with a handful of pens. I don't know, 5 or 6 that I took to a calligraphy guild meeting. And Jane was there and said, look, I'll buy that from you. And I thought she was nuts. I thought, it's just a hunk of wood, whatever. And she says, no, you don't understand. There'll be a real market for this if you decided to do it. Word spread, more people asked, and realized there was a need. My wife told me that when I decided to do it, that I was going to be lucky to sell 10 pens, and that I would fulfill the market demand for the weirdo oblique pen holder. And I still give her grief to this day over it. And so that's how it started. It all spread by word of mouth. I started with my shopsmith, and then after I realized I sold a few, I took the money that I made from selling the few and bought a cheap lathe on Craigslist. And I've done this all with the pen holder sales supporting every little bit of growth into it. So I've never really had to take a huge risk. I'm a stay-at-home dad as well. I'm not as busy as I once used to be because my kids are older. My son is in 3rd grade now, and my daughter is in pre-K, and she loves school so much that she asked to go every day. She didn't used to go every day. She used to go a couple days a week, and she kept asking to go more and more and more. So we allowed her to do it because we kind of live rural, so there's not any kids for her to play with or associate with. So it was good for her to develop. So that ended up had more and more time to make pins. And so the kids are now, the daughter's gone 4 days a week. So, yeah, there's a clock. And did this all just that way. So it's very simple to get started in something like this. You know, you just have to take your time. It's a scary thing to leave and a source of income and then start something new. And luckily I didn't have to do that at the time. I was actually a stay-at-home father first, chose to sold my old music store and stay home with kids instead of kids being shoved off to a babysitter every day. So we had a little bit of a lifestyle change with loss of income and all that, but it all worked out. Mr. Sato. It's late there, isn't it? It's what? It's probably almost midnight there in Japan. All right. Any other questions? I've got through I've got through all my questions I had via DM. How long does it take? The watch parts, well, let's see. We'll base it on a single wood, because if there's segmented, I have to glue that together and let it dry first. So to turn the pin is really, really quick. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then I carve the little recess. And then I sit down for probably, each one I'd say at least 4 hours laying out watch parts. And that's just laying them out, shaping them, putting it together like a puzzle. And then the base filling of it, which is just really, really rough. It looks horrible. And then I start working out all the any bubbles that develop or anything like that. So overall, I would say by the time it's all done, I probably have a good 5 hours in it, maybe a little bit more if something goes awry. I don't make much on hourly when I'm making a watch parts pin, but I like making them. And so I sacrifice an hourly rate a little bit there, because, you know, if I'm doing 5 or 6 hours plus a little bit of parts and I'm charging a base price of $200, it's not a whole lot on the hour. So yeah, it takes 5 hours, I would say 6 hours from start to finish. And I use the CA, which hardens instantly, so that reduces a lot of my wait time and drying and all of that. So thank you. I like making them. They're cool. It's fun. Gets a lot of interest. So, all right. Anything else? Ask me anything. History, about myself, I don't care. I'm an open book. I will give you, here, I'll show you something while we're waiting. Hold on. Something I'm doing, you'll get a sneak peek if you're watching this video. I'm going to do a giveaway this week. Did Mercury help me a lot? Yes. Mercury CA is a brand. Hold on. This is it. It's a USA made stuff. It's very, very clear. And it works wonderfully. It made my finish a lot better. Before I used Instabond. Now I'm going to show you the difference between Instabond and Mercury. Both clear white bottles. Instabond is like a tan color. Mercury is clear as you can get. So my finish improved quite a bit just from switching to this product. It's awesome stuff. Comes with the most awesome cap ever. It's crazy. It's open every time you take the cap off, because there's this tiny little pin in there that pierces and seals it. Whereas all the other CA glues, have this ridiculous cap. Glue fills it up. You can't get it on. It doesn't seal. Doesn't have a very long life. This stuff is awesome. And I do sell it on the website. It's kind of expensive. You know, $10 a bottle isn't cheap. And trust me, I'm not making a bunch on that at all. But it's awesome, awesome stuff. Very, very clear. Yes, caps make me crazy. Favorite modern and vintage nibs? That was one of the questions I had. I actually skipped over. Okay. Modern nib, Leonard Principal is my favorite. I like a very, very sharp, very, very pointed nib. I don't get it right as much as I used to because of so many pins. But when I do right, I like the Leonard Principal EF. You can get them at Paper and Ink Arts. Vintage nibs, I use Musselman Perfections. And it's not because I spent a ton of money to buy them. It's because I got them at a good price and I got a lot of them and I love that nib. And the reason that I like that nib, and I'm hesitant to say how much I like it, the difference isn't the nib being able to write better. The difference is more that the vintage nibs are more consistent in quality. And the reason why, I'll explain this because I've been asked this a lot of times. Why can't we just make a nib like the Principality #1 or whatever? This is a Principal, but whatever. Okay, modern day, these are fed into a machine. The machine stamps them, bends them, punches them, slits them, everything else. Machines make mistakes. Humans make mistakes. However, they're dumped out in thousands or whatever with the modern machines. The way it used to work was, like, for example, there's a great article on a tour of the Gillette factory. Yep, that's right. Sewing ladies. Seamstresses. Seamstresses were employed by Gillette because they did great detailed work. And what happened was, first, a lady would pick up a sheet. She would stamp it out by hand, look at each piece, pick it up, set it in the next station, set it in the next station. And then the next person did it for the curving process, and then the slitting process, and then the grinding process. Well, all of a nib was handled by, say, 30 different humans. They looked at it each time, and they said it. Quality control was good. Bad ones got thrown away each step of the way. So if something went wrong, like a slit was off, to where, you know, the one tine would be huge and one tine would be small, it was thrown away. So there was quality control every time. Then one of the very last steps was grinding process. So what they would do is they'd look at it, check the flexibility, they would grind it by hand, okay? And that's why you'll see grind marks on the old ones that look very different than today. And they would tune it, and it worked and tested the way it should, and they said, this is a great nib, put it in the box. That can't happen today. We can't. If it did, it would drive the prices of these up to a ridiculous amount like you pay for vintage nibs. That's the problem. That's the difference. It's the quality control. And you can't get that today. For a nib manufacturer to invest in, whatever it would take, laser technology to scan each one, etc., it would just outweigh the small little niche market that there is for calligraphers of nibs, and then the price would go from $2 to $10 a nib. So you have to give and take. So with modern nibs, what I suggest and the way I do it, buy a box. When you buy a box, the nib price goes down a lot. I'm going to pull numbers from top of my head. This doesn't mean anything, but say, for example, right now, you buy a Leonard Principal for $2.25, I think is typical. If you buy it in bulk, maybe it's $1.50. I forget what the breakdown is. You'd have to check with like Paper and Ink Arts. But there's a quantity break if you buy a bunch, and like Principals come in boxes of 100, and it reduces the cost huge. So when you get a bad nib, throw it away. Get a good nib. Get another bad nib, throw it away. You're going to get bad nibs in a box. It's going to happen. There's nothing we can do unless you have millions of dollars and want to invest in manufacturing nibs and keeping the cost the same for no profit. It's not going to change. We just can't handle the labor rates that we once did. So there you go. There's my nib discussion. So I use my vintage nibs because they're more consistent. Everyone I know is going to be good, and that's it. And I got them very, very cheap. I didn't pay stupid prices. So, is everybody still there? Got quiet. All right. Maybe they're not. I don't know if I had another. There we go. Well, I see some hearts. All right. So people are alive. So that's my nib discussion. Last thing I'll do, and then I'll let everybody go and I'll get off here. Does he? That's cool. That is cool. I didn't know that they check all the nibs. So maybe it's, you know, getting better. So, all right, sneak preview. Hold on. I have not done a giveaway in a long time. Oh, show the dog. I'll show the dog before I go too. Good Lord. She's over there. Most memorable holder. You know, the one that's always going to stick in my brain right now is probably the one I just recently did with the Bible pages. Not just because it was family heirloom piece and it was coming up with a way to do it. I did that for Jen Sweeney. I took basically, she had her grandmother's Bible and had a bunch of loose pages and a couple torn pages in it. And I took those and I covered the surface of the pin and ripped up strips of it and then put a verse on the top of it. Not because of the religious connotation, but just because it was a cool piece of their family history that's now made into a pin instead of a ripped page falling out of a book. So that's pretty cool. I think that one's up there. There's probably a couple more if I thought about it longer. But all right, so I haven't done a giveaway in a while. So I'm going to be doing a giveaway. I think I'll probably start it tomorrow. Don't hold me to that. It just kind of depends on real life and when I get a chance to take pictures and get the post done. But one of the things is it's going to be a pin, of course. That's always the case. But I want to make it very, very different. So I did something I've never done before, and that was make an inkwell tray out of the same wood. And I'll include the pin. Doesn't have a flange or an end in it yet, so it can be left, right, oblique, whatever. I'm even going to engrave the flange. It's made out of Chechen, which is Caribbean rosewood. So I'm going to be giving that away. Good Lord, phone's ringing like crazy. So that's coming soon. I'm thinking tomorrow. We shall see. But it should be a cool little thing and something I've never done before. I actually was just asked. I'll flip this around so you can see. There you go. There's a better shot of it. I was just asked to make one in this style, and I'd never had. And so before I accepted, I wanted to be able to make one, and I did. So that's it. So I'm going to give that away, which is a little bit more than just my normal pin. And it's done in my favorite finish, which is just an oil finish, which these are my personal pin holders that I use in a little box. Same finish, just a natural oil. You get to feel the wood. So anyhow, I'll be giving that away. All right. Thank you. Last request I had was to show the dog. Ella, come here. Puppy coming up. She's asleep. This is Ella. She is an Australian Shepherd. She's the new shop dog. Oh, you tired? So there gets all the hearts flowing. So she's my new little companion. No tail. She hangs out in the shop all day with me. Don't you? Yeah. So there you have it. Yes, she is. She's fluffy. Crazy. It's my shadow. She is my shadow. Follows me everywhere. She's not normally calm like this. This is during the day in the shop. She kind of takes this as her nap time because can't always pay attention to her every moment, every day, every minute in the shop. So anyhow, how to take care. Oh, cool. Yeah, that's, I've been meaning for a long time to do like a care thing on pin holder on my website, and I never have. Here, I'll put you down. For a pin, gloss finish, there's not a whole lot you got to do. Wipe it down with soapy, lightly soapy water. If you get ink on the end of it, if you want it to remain pretty, wipe the ink off as you accumulate any ink on it. For my friction polish or my oil pins like this, I recommend wiping it down with wax as well as wiping it down as you get ink on it. Wiping it down with wax. I'll show you the wax I use for everything. In every household, in my opinion, good Lord, I got stuff all over me. Oh, it's from the dog. Should have this SC Johnson paste wax. It's probably backwards on your screen, but this is awesome stuff. You can use it for wood, you can use it for metal, you can use it for everything. This is what I wipe down. When I need to wax something, I use this. It's great for like window tracks that are sticky, and you can just use it for everything around your house, as well as wipe it on your pin and put a little bit of wax on the surface, and that'll help it last a little bit longer. Oil, I recommend doing that 2 or 3 times a year. Friction polish finish, I recommend doing it at least once a year. And then you can even put it on gloss pins, and it will make them even slicker, smooth. So there you have it. How far does wax work? No, not car wax. Car wax is completely different. It has all kinds of, some of them even have abrasives in it. So no, I wouldn't use car wax. Use paste wax, like it's a household wax. Typically it will say on it like for wood, metal, leather, plastic, that I wouldn't use car wax, no. So there we have it. Okay, it's been real. I think we went through all the DM questions I had, as many as I could here. We're probably about out of time shortly. I don't know how long we've been doing this. You've got to see the crazy dog. So, and always, if you have questions, email me. Even if people hesitate to email me and ask, if you're going to, I get questions for someone going to buy a pen from Paper and Ink Arts. I get questions from people going to buy pens from another person. I don't care. I'll help you. I'm not just in this for money. Don't get me wrong, I got some bills to pay with this now because I have a shop and electricity and all that. However, the primary focus for me is not money. I enjoy doing this. So I'll help you out. If you're new, don't know how to start, check out my links section on my website. It has all kinds of links to other websites that I think are great. Ask me anything anytime. Just email me. Sometimes it takes me a few days to get to emails because I get so many, but I get to them all eventually. So, all right. Hope everyone has a good day. Thanks for joining me. And I'm going to leave us up for the 24. And I'm also, hopefully, as long as nothing goes wrong, save it. And I will also post it to my YouTube, provided that after I hit end, that save button shows up and I can save it. So, oh yeah, the archives. Man, I need to get back on that too. I've got more stuff to scan. The problem is now I've got to the point that stuff that I got to scan is either books, which is just so much work to scan, or large. So I'm going to be working on that again, and I promise I'll be adding more to that as soon as I can. So yeah, the archives of my collection is on my links page. You get it. You can see actually in super high resolution, like my original Zenarian certificate and all that kind of stuff. So stuff that in, super high res. So, all right. Well, hope everybody has a great day. One watch out in the next day or so. I'm going to be doing that giveaway for that ink jar set with the pin. Should be cool. And I'll talk to you later. Thank you guys.